Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Claire and you are watching another episode of my cake chemistry series, the one where I talk all about the science behind baking. If you're enjoying these videos so far, please do remember to give them a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications button so that you don't miss any of the latest updates from me. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in the future, please do drop them in the comments below or come and say hello to me over on Instagram. Now today we are talking all about fats in baking and particularly how to replace them, because this is something I got asked recently. Now, as with any ingredient, if we want to replace it, alter the quantity, or eliminate it entirely, we've got to understand exactly how that ingredient functions in our recipe so we can find a suitable alternative. Now, I've already done a video on the functions of fat in baking. Well, I think I have anyway. If I haven't, I need to do that. So I'll link it in the description below. I definitely recommend checking that out first. However, just to summarise, here are the main functions of fat in baked goods. Number one, tenderising, making something really soft, nice to eat, like in cakes. Secondly, providing flakiness. This is certainly the case in pastries such as croissants, which have that unique texture. They help with leavening, i.e. making products rise, such is the case in cakes, particularly when we use the creaming method, adding moistness, and also preventing staling so that baked goods stay fresher for longer. And finally, providing a rich flavour that kind of lingers in the mouth. These are all very important functions, and so I wouldn't actually advise eliminating all of the fat from your recipe. Instead, I would just replace some of it or reduce it down a little bit if possible. If you're doing it for health reasons, you could replace that fat with a healthier one, or one that you or the end consumer can tolerate or digest. I know that some people can't handle something such as butter, or they can't have dairy or whatever, but they can have oils. So depending on the product that we're making, we may be able to make that substitute. Some recipes for baked goods are actually made with oil anyway, such as muffins, brownies. Carrot cake is a classic example. If the fat is not being used for leavening, i.e. helping that product to rise, we can often use oil. If you've watched my video butter versus oil, you know that oil does not provide any leavening, whereas butter can be whipped and we can incorporate air bubbles. If we're making biscuits or cookies, and we replace butter with oil, they are going to spread a little bit more, but we can counteract that by adding a little bit of cake flour, which absorbs more moisture and oils, making the dough just a little bit more stiff and dry. We can also reduce the fat content when our recipe calls for things like milk, cream, yogurt, cream cheese, and use lower fat versions. I generally do use the full fat stuff when it comes to baking, so it just tastes better, but this is an easy way to reduce the fat. And if the product is lacking flavour slightly, we can always add something else to make up for that, such as vanilla extract. There are of course non-dairy alternatives to all of these ingredients now, which are pretty readily available in our supermarkets. However, they may not always be lower in fat, but if you can't tolerate dairy, this is an easy switch. Another ingredient which we can reduce or sometimes even replace, depending on the amount in our recipe, are eggs. We could just use egg whites since they don't contain any fat, or the fat is contained in the yolk. It is important to bear in mind that yolks provide richness, colour and flavour, so if that is particularly important in your recipe, it needs to be accounted for. Another great alternative to fats are nuts. Now, I realise that nuts are a fat, but we could say they're a healthier one. They provide a lot of moistness and flavour, particularly when toasted. I love using them in tray bakes such as brownies, and they just give that fudginess and a slightly different texture. We can also use nut butters such as peanut butter, almond butter, and even seed butters. I've seen like tahini used in some recipes, but these are great for people who maybe can't tolerate some of the main butters, margarines, and oils. Now let's go on to fat replacers. It's very difficult to replace all of the fat in a recipe with just one ingredient, as it does hold so many different functions. So we may have to use a combination of things depending on what is required. This can take a lot of trial and error, as something that works well in one recipe might not work so well in another. It's a careful balance, and knowing what will work best comes with practice and knowledge. The first thing we can use are certain pureed dried fruits. Dates and prunes, for example, when pureed, can provide a lot of flavour, fudginess and chewiness to recipes that require it. So they're particularly good in things like brownies and soft cookies. They also contain naturally occurring sugars, pectin and fruit pulp, which can give that sort of gumminess. The second thing we can use are certain pureed fresh fruits. Applesauce is great in cakes and muffins due to its high moisture content of around 88%, which aids in aeration. However, it's not so good in biscuit and cookie recipes that require that crispiness. It's also pretty flavourless, so it probably won't be detected. Another thing which works really well is mashed banana. However, bear in mind that this will impart a banana flavour, which may not always be desirable. If we are using some kind of pureed fresh fruit, we may want to reduce the other liquids in our recipe slightly. The fruit also doesn't tenderize as well as fat, so we may want to find something else to add which is going to help with tenderizing or reduce the amount of tougheners. The third ingredient we can use are beans, magic beans. They are around 70% moisture and they also provide tenderness. Beans, when pureed, give a kind of creamy texture, a very pleasant mouthfeel, and have a very mild flavour, so nobody's going to know. I would suggest using something like white beans, chickpeas, or you can use black beans depending on the final colour of your product. Black beans are great in brownies, for example. Fourth ingredient are gums. What do I mean by gums? I'm talking pectin, which is found naturally in a lot of fruits, cellulose gum, xanthan gum, which we often use in gluten-free baking. They provide tenderness, aeration, and again, a creamy mouthfeel. In fact, if you look at the ingredients of a lot of low-fat products, such as salad dressings, you'll often see xanthan gum listed. And the fifth one, oat-based ingredients. Oat flour, oatmeal, oat bran, these all have the ability to tenderize low moisture products and also delay staling. This is most likely due to the fact that they're very good at absorbing water. As well as this, and this is the sixth one, certain starches, potato starch and maltodextrins, it's a complicated word, also have the same ability, so they will tenderize low moisture products. Ingredient number 7, sugar and sweeteners. These add tenderness and moistness, and they actually have a fair few similar properties to fat. If you want to see the video I did on the functions of sugar in baking, I'll link it below. You'll definitely find that helpful. Just bear in mind that if we're replacing some of the fat with sugar, it is going to increase the sweetness, particularly if we've already got sugar in there. And number 8, emulsifiers. Mono and diglycerides add moistness, tenderness, they aid in aeration and they delay staling. There are a lot of emulsifiers available, some of them are natural, such as eggs, and perhaps I'll cover that in another video. In fact, I've already done a video on emulsifiers, so definitely go and check that one out. Number 9, we are nearly there now, butter flavouring. What else can I say really? Butter obviously has a very unique flavour, so if we remove that from our recipe, particularly one that contains quite a high amount, it's going to be kind of noticeable. So there are now butter flavourings and essences that we can add instead to give it that je ne sais quoi. And finally, number 10, and this is again related to flavour. Fat provides a lot of flavour, and also flavour molecules dissolve in fat. So if we take it out of our recipe, our product might end up being a little bit bland. So we want it instead ingredients that are high in base notes and middle notes. I'm talking things such as spices, caramelized sugar, toasted nuts, cocoa, maple syrup, honey, things like that, which are just going to add that extra bit of flavour to whatever we're making. And that brings us to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and it was helpful, and let me know if you've got any secret ingredients of your own that you use to replace or reduce the fat in your recipe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye!